25 famous faces who died in front of audiences you'd never recognize today. They walked onto the stage expecting applause music and another unforgettable performance. But in front of shocked audiences, the spotlight became their final place. From wrestlers and singers to comedians and musicians, these are the performers whose last moments happened in public. Subscribe to Classic Hollywood Legends and let's begin. Mitsuharu Misawa. On June 13, 2009, Mitsuharu Misawa walked into Hiroshima Green Arena for a tag team match. The Japanese wrestling fans expected to be intense, physical, and dramatic. He was teaming with Go Shiozaki against Akitoshi Saito and Bison Smith. By then, Misawa was already a legend, the founder of pro wrestling. Noah, a former All Japan star and one of the most respected wrestlers of his generation. During the match, Saito delivered a back suplex. Misawa landed hard, stayed down, and did not respond. At first, the crowd could not understand what they were seeing. Wrestling had trained them to expect pain, silence, and sudden reversals. Can you imagine watching the ring and slowly realizing this was no longer part of the performance? The referee stopped the match as wrestlers, officials, and medical staff rushed in. CPR was performed before Misawa was taken to Hiroshima University Hospital. He was pronounced dead later that night at 46, with reports linking his death to a catastrophic cervical spinal injury. Karl Wallenda. The wire between the Condado Plaza hotel towers began to move as Karl Wallenda tried to steady himself above San Juan, Puerto Rico. At 73, the patriarch of the Flying Wallendas was still performing the kind of high-wire walk that had made his family famous around the world. This stunt on March 22, 1978, was meant to promote an upcoming circus appearance, but the coastal wind turned the crossing into something far more dangerous. Wallenda had spent most of his life above the ground, often working without a safety net. Spectators watched as he crouched low and fought to keep control of his balancing pole. What would you do if you were watching a legend struggle in the air and suddenly realized this was not part of the show? Moments later, Wallenda lost his balance and fell. He was pronounced dead after reaching the hospital, leaving behind one of the most haunting final acts in circus history. Valencia Prime. The lights at Taboo Lounge were still pointed toward the stage when Valencia Prime's performance suddenly stopped. She was only 25, already loved in Philadelphia's drag scene and known proudly as Philadelphia's plus-size dancing diva. At Taboo Lounge and Sports Bar in Center City, her shows carried confidence, movement, humor, and the kind of energy that made people feel seen. During a performance in September 2022, Valencia collapsed on stage. For the audience, the shift must have been terrifying. One moment, filled with music and applause, the next filled with confusion, fear, and people rushing to help. Can you imagine watching someone bring joy to a room, then realizing the danger in front of you was real? Paramedics responded, but Valencia Prime was later pronounced dead. The Philadelphia Medical Examiner listed her cause of death as atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease and classified it as natural causes. Her passing left the local LGBTQ+ community grieving a performer remembered for brightness, presence, and love. Krishnakumar Kunnath. The final songs at Nazrul Mancha carried the kind of emotion KK had given Indian audiences for decades. On May 31, 2022, Krishnakumar Kunnath, known everywhere as KK, performed in Kolkata after a career built on playback hits, college memories, and a voice that made heartbreak sound personal. He was not reported to have died on stage. After the concert, he returned to his hotel, complained of feeling unwell, and collapsed there. That detail matters because the tragedy was still tied to the performance. The applause had barely faded before the night turned into an emergency. Can you imagine leaving a concert still hearing the crowd's cheers then realizing the singer everyone just celebrated was fighting for his life. KK was rushed to Calcutta Medical Research Institute, where doctors declared him dead. He was 53. A post-mortem later pointed to a heart attack, leaving fans across India mourning a voice that had followed them through love, youth, and memory. Costa Titch, Konstantinos Tsobanoglu. Costa Titch hit the Ultra South Africa stage in Johannesburg with the explosive movement that had made him one of the brightest names in South African music. Born Konstantinos Tsobanoglu, he was known as a rapper-dancer and a mapiano artist whose songs like Big Flexa helped push his sound beyond South Africa. He was only 28 when the performance became his final public moment. During the set, Costa appeared to collapse, got back up, and tried to continue. Seconds later, he went down again, as people around him rushed to help. The crowd had come for music, lights, and energy, but suddenly, the stage became a place of panic. Can you imagine watching an artist rise again, then realizing something was terribly wrong? Costa Titch died after the incident. In 2024, his family said a post-mortem found significant strain on his heart, worsened by stress and fatigue, likely causing an irregular heartbeat and fatal seizure. Dawn Brancheau. The poolside restaurant at SeaWorld Orlando was still filled with guests when Dawn Brancheau knelt beside Tilikum after a Dine with Shamu performance. She was one of the park's most experienced orca trainers, known for her confidence around the animals, and for years of work that made her one of SeaWorld's most recognizable faces. Then the routine interaction changed without warning. Tilikum pulled Brancheau into the water, and the people watching were suddenly no longer spectators at a show, but witnesses to a real emergency. Staff tried to respond as the scene moved from performance to rescue. Can you imagine sitting only feet away from the pool and realizing the danger was happening in real life? Brancheau died on February 24, 2010, at 40 years old. The medical examiner listed drowning and blunt force trauma as the cause of death. Her death later became central to the public debate over orca captivity trainer safety and SeaWorld's future. Dimebag Darrell Abbott. The first chords had only just crashed through Alrosa Villa when a night of heavy metal turned into one of rock's darkest tragedies. Darrell Dimebag Abbott, the former Pantera guitarist, whose riffs helped shape modern metal, was performing with Damageplan in Columbus, Ohio, on December 8, 2004. The club was packed close to the stage, the kind of room where fans could feel every drum hit and guitar note almost directly in their chest. Then during the opening song, a gunman rushed onto the stage and opened fire. For a few horrifying seconds, the crowd could not process what was happening. The noise, the panic, and the music blurred together. Can you imagine coming to hear a guitar legend play, then realizing the danger was real? Abbott was killed at 38, along with Jeff Thompson, Nathan Bray, and Aaron Hulk. Police officer James Niggemeyer stopped the attacker, but the damage was already done. That night, a guitar built for thunder fell silent under the stage lights. Richard Versalle. A tall ladder stood against the file cabinets in the opening scene of the Macropulos case at the Metropolitan Opera. Richard Versalle, an American tenor known for demanding Wagner roles, was playing Vitek, a law clerk, during the Met's first production of Leos Janáček's opera on January 5, 1996. Only minutes into the performance, he climbed the ladder as part of the staging and sang a line about how long a person can live. Then his body suddenly gave way. Can you imagine sitting in an opera house and not knowing whether a fall was theater or a real medical emergency? Versalle fell to the stage after suffering an apparent heart attack. The performance was stopped, and he was taken to St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. He was 63. The opera's story was already about time, aging, and unnatural life, which made his final moment feel painfully impossible to separate from the scene around him. Nick Menza. The drum kit at the Baked Potato was still shaking when Nick Menza suddenly collapsed behind it. The former Megadeth drummer was performing with OHM at the Studio City Jazz Club in Los Angeles on May 21st, 2016, a small venue where every hit of the snare could be felt close to the stage. Menza had helped define Megadeth's classic era, playing on albums such as Rust in Peace Countdown to Extinction Euthanasia and Cryptic Writings. The band was reportedly in the third song of the set when Menza went down. At first, the room had only the shock of confusion, a drummer disappearing from the rhythm he had controlled seconds earlier. Can you imagine hearing the beat stop and slowly realizing something was wrong behind the kit? Paramedics tried to revive him, but Menza was pronounced dead. He was 51, and his final performance left the metal world stunned. Sib Hashian. The drum stool on the Legends of Rock cruise suddenly became the center of the emergency. Sib Hashian, best known as the former drummer of Boston, was performing aboard the cruise in March 2017 when he collapsed during a live set. Years earlier, his drums had helped power Boston's massive 1976 debut album, including the rock classic More Than a Feeling, and he also played on the band's 1978 follow-up Don't Look Back. Hashian was 67, still playing for fans who remembered the arena rock sound that made Boston famous. The cruise setting made the moment feel even more unreal. Music, nostalgia, applause, and then sudden panic at sea. Can you imagine watching a rock veteran behind the kit, then realizing the beat had stopped for the worst possible reason? According to his son, Hashian died after collapsing on stage during the performance. His final show turned a celebration of classic rock into a stunned farewell. J.I. Rodale. The couch on the Dick Cavett show looked ordinary until J.I. Rodale suddenly went still. Rodale was a publisher, author, and early organic farming advocate whose work helped spread ideas about natural food and healthy living in America. During a June 8, 1971 taping in New York, his own interview had already finished, and he remained seated while Cavett spoke with journalist Pete Hamill. Then Rodale made a strange snore-like sound and slumped over. The episode was never broadcast. Can you imagine sitting in that studio, hearing laughter moments earlier, then watching doctors rush toward the stage? Medical help tried to revive him, but Rodale could not be saved. He was pronounced dead at Roosevelt Hospital at 72. Later retellings often added dramatic lines about his health, but the verified story is chilling enough. A man publicly associated with long life died during a television taping under studio lights, while the cameras were still there. Colonel Bruce Hampton. A 70th birthday concert at Atlanta's Fox Theater became Colonel Bruce Hampton's final jam. The event, called Hampton 70, gathered musicians connected to the jam band world to honor a man often remembered as one of the scene's strange, influential elders. Hampton had led groups, including Hampton Grease Band, and helped shape a loose, experimental Atlanta sound that later musicians carried forward. Near the end of the night, Hampton was on stage during Turn On Your Love Light. He dropped to his knees near a speaker, and for a brief moment, some people around him thought it was another odd piece of stage behavior from a performer known for unpredictability. Can you imagine watching a tribute concert and slowly realizing the guest of honor was not acting? Hampton collapsed on May 1st, 2017, and died shortly afterward at 70. The celebration, meant to honor his life, became the last scene of it, surrounded by music friends and a stage full of witnesses. Dick Shawn. Dick Shawn was lying motionless on the stage at UC San Diego, and for several minutes many people thought the silence was still part of the joke. The comedian and actor, remembered for films like It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, and Mel Brooks's The Producers, was performing on April 17, 1987, when his routine turned frighteningly real. His act had always been unpredictable, filled with strange physical comedy and sudden shifts, so the audience did not immediately understand that something was wrong. Can you imagine laughing at a performer's stillness, then slowly realizing he was fighting for his life? A doctor from the audience eventually rushed forward. CPR was attempted, and Shawn was taken to Scripps Memorial Hospital in La Jolla. He was pronounced dead after suffering a heart attack. He was 63. His final performance became one of comedy's most unsettling stories because the line between act and emergency disappeared under the stage lights. Tommy Cooper. The red fez, the giant cloak, and the awkward pause all looked exactly like Tommy Cooper's kind of comedy. During Live from Her Majesty's at Her Majesty's Theatre in London, the Welsh comedian and magician was performing in front of a live audience and millions watching on television. His act often made failure look intentional, so when he collapsed during the sketch on April 15, 1984, many people laughed because they believed it was another perfectly timed gag. Can you imagine watching a comedian fall, laughing for a few seconds, then slowly realizing the joke had stopped? Behind the curtain, the crew understood the truth faster than the audience. Cooper had suffered a heart attack. The broadcast cut away, and he was taken to Westminster Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 63. His final performance became one of British television's most haunting moments because the audience's laughter remained for a moment after the danger had become real. Owen Hart. The blue blazer costume was meant to turn Owen Hart's entrance into a playful superhero stunt. At WWF's Over the Edge event in Kansas City's Kemper Arena, Hart was scheduled to descend from the rafters before his Intercontinental Championship match. He was 34, a member of the famous Hart wrestling family, and respected by fans as both a gifted technician and a natural entertainer. The stunt went wrong before he reached the ring. His harness released early, sending him falling from high above the arena. The television audience did not see the fall because a video package was airing, but people inside the building watched confusion turn into horror as medical staff rushed to help. Can you imagine sitting in that crowd and realizing a dramatic entrance had become a real tragedy? Hart was taken to Truman Medical Center and later pronounced dead. Reports listed his death as the result of internal bleeding from blunt force trauma after the fall. The show controversially continued, but Owen Hart's final entrance remained one of wrestling's darkest moments. Tiny Tim. A ukulele, a trembling falsetto, and Tiptoe Through the Tulips followed Tiny Tim to his final performance. Born Herbert Corey, he had turned an old 1920s song into a strange 1968 pop hit, becoming famous for his delicate voice, long hair, and childlike stage persona. By late 1996, his health was fragile, and he had already suffered heart trouble earlier that year. At a benefit for the Women's Club of Minneapolis on November 30th, 1996, Tiny Tim told his wife Susan that he did not feel well, but he still went on because he did not want to disappoint the audience. During his signature song, he cut the performance short and began to leave the stage. Can you imagine hearing applause for a song, then realizing the singer was collapsing in front of everyone? He was taken to Hennepin County Medical Center and pronounced dead that night at 64. Reports described the apparent cause as cardiac arrest. Barbara Weldens. Barbara Weldens often sang barefoot, turning the stage into something intimate, fragile, and exposed. In July 2017, the French singer-songwriter was performing at the festival Léo Ferré in Gourdon, southwest France, inside the church of Notre-Dame des Cordeliers. She was 35 and only months earlier had released her debut album, Le Grand Ha de l'Homme, a project that had begun bringing her wider recognition. During the concert, Weldens suddenly collapsed in front of the audience. Early reports suspected an electrical fault, and investigators later confirmed through autopsy that she had been electrocuted. Around 200 people were reportedly at the performance, and no other injuries were reported. Can you imagine hearing a voice fill a quiet church, then realizing the silence afterward was not part of the song? Medical help could not save her. Her final performance left the French music world grieving a rising artist whose career had only just begun. Perro Aguayo Jr. Pedro Aguayo Ramirez. Perro Aguayo Jr. was already slumped across the middle rope when the match around him began to feel wrong. Known in Mexico as El Hijo del Perro Aguayo Pedro Aguayo Ramirez, was one of Lucha Libre's biggest names, carrying both his father's famous legacy and his own reputation for intensity. In March 2015, he was wrestling in Tijuana, teaming with Monique against Rey Mysterio Jr. and Extreme Tiger. After a move near the ropes, Aguayo stopped responding. For a short time, the action continued, because not everyone understood how serious the injury was. The image was disturbing, a packed arena, masked wrestlers moving through the match, and one man motionless where he should have been fighting back. What would you think if you saw a wrestler stay still and nobody realized the danger fast enough? Aguayo was taken to a nearby hospital and pronounced dead. He was 35. Later reports linked his death to severe cervical trauma, making his final match one of Lucha Libre's most painful tragedies. Leslie Harvey. The microphone at Swansea's top-ranked suite carried the danger nobody in the room could see. Leslie Les Harvey, the Scottish guitarist and co-founder of Stone the Crows, was preparing to perform with the band on May 3, 1972. He was only 27, but already respected in British blues rock, playing alongside singer Maggie Bell in a group managed in the orbit of Peter Grant. During the performance, Harvey touched an unearthed microphone, while his other hand was on the metal strings of his guitar. The electrical shock hit him in front of the audience, turning an ordinary stage setup into a fatal accident. Some accounts say others were also shocked while trying to help. Can you imagine watching a guitarist reach for a microphone, then realizing the stage itself had become deadly? Harvey was taken for medical help, but was pronounced dead on arrival. His death remained one of rock music's most chilling warnings about stage safety. Sam Patch. A wooden platform rose above the Genesee River, and Sam Patch climbed it, with thousands watching from the banks of Rochester. Known as the Yankee Leaper, Patch had become one of America's earliest daredevil celebrities by jumping from bridges, factory walls, waterfalls, and even near Niagara Falls. His slogan, "Some things can be done as well as others," followed him from stunt to stunt. On November 13, 1829, he returned to High Falls for a repeat leap, this time from a platform that made the drop far higher than before. The crowd expected another impossible survival. Patch jumped, but witnesses later said his body lost its proper form in the air before he struck the water and disappeared. Can you imagine watching a famous daredevil vanish beneath the river, waiting for him to rise, and realizing he never would? His body was found months later, downstream, frozen in ice. Patch was only in his early 20s, but his final jump helped create the American daredevil myth. Jane Little. The double bass was taller than Jane Little herself, yet it stayed in her hands for more than 70 years. She joined the youth orchestra that became the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra in 1945, when she was only 16, and remained with the ensemble long enough to be recognized by Guinness World Records for the longest tenure with a single orchestra. By 2016, she was 87, frail, and undergoing treatment for multiple myeloma, but she was still performing. During an Atlanta Symphony Pops concert celebrating Broadway's golden age, the orchestra reached the encore, Irving Berlin's "There's No Business Like Show Business." Little collapsed on stage with her instrument nearby. Can you imagine spending a lifetime inside one orchestra, then having your final moment arrive in the middle of the music? Emergency responders briefly revived her, and she was taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, where she later died. Her final performance closed a career that had lasted 71 years. Onie Wheeler. The wooden circle of the Grand Ole Opry held decades of country music history when Onie Wheeler stepped into it for his final appearance. Wheeler was a country gospel, bluegrass, and rockabilly musician from Missouri known for guitar, harmonica, and years of work around Nashville. He had recorded for labels including Columbia and Sun Records, and he also spent time performing with Roy Acuff's Smoky Mountain Boys. In May 1984, Wheeler was taking part in a taping connected to Reverend Jimmy Snow's Grand Ole Gospel Time on the Opry stage. While singing a hymn, he suddenly collapsed in front of the audience. What would you feel if a gospel performance suddenly turned into a real emergency before anyone understood what was happening? Wheeler was taken to a Nashville hospital, where he died at 62. The Opry stage had been part of his musical life for years, and it became the place where his final song was cut short. Mike Scaccia, a birthday show for rigor mortis singer Bruce Corbett, brought Mike Scaccia back onto a Fort Worth stage surrounded by friends, metal fans, and the sound he had helped build for decades. Scaccia was best known as the guitarist for Rigor Mortis and Ministry, where his aggressive playing became part of industrial metal's heavier turn, including Ministry's Psalm 69 era. At the Rail Club on December 22, 2012, the celebration turned frightening during the performance. Scaccia collapsed on stage, and early reports described confusion over whether he had suffered a seizure before later reports pointed to a sudden heart attack brought on by heart disease. Can you imagine watching a guitarist tear through a set, then seeing the music stop because the emergency was real? Scaccia was pronounced dead at 47. The night meant to honor one musician became the final performance of another, leaving the metal community stunned. Mark Sandman. Mark Sandman's two-string slide bass sat at the center of Morphine's dark, low sound. As the band's singer, bassist, and main creative force, he helped turn the Boston group into a cult alternative rock act during the 1990s with music built around bass drums and Dana Cawley's baritone saxophone. In July 1999, Morphine was performing in Palestrina, Italy, near Rome, when Sandman suddenly collapsed on stage. He was only 46. The night had the shape of a normal festival appearance until the music stopped and the people near the stage understood that something was terribly wrong. Can you imagine hearing that deep voice and bass line one moment, then watching the band fall into silence the next? Sandman died from a heart attack, and Morphine effectively ended after his death. His final performance left behind the image of a musician whose sound was quiet, strange, intimate, and impossible to replace.